we're almost 1 year removed from the firing of CEO Bob Chapek of the Walt Disney Company. This was done at the hands of now former CFO Christine McCarthy and then former and now current CEO Bob Iger. One of Bob Iger's main objectives coming back was to find a new CEO for the Walt Disney Company, and so far none have been named while Bob Iger's contract has been extended. Let's talk about that here on That Park Place. Hello, it's me, Jonas J. Campbell, and we're here to talk today about the CEO problem at the Walt Disney Company. As you heard in the intro, the Walt Disney Company is looking for a current CEO. They've made some indications on CNBC that maybe their internal candidates aren't quite ready yet. The Disney Company also has some issues in bringing in an outside partner in order to take over the company. They did have some success with Michael Eisner from Paramount, who revitalized the company, bringing them to the Disney decade and also the Disney Renaissance that Disney is very happy to capitalize on today. Even though the Disney Company has not announced who their next CEO will be, they've made some public moves that could be interpreted as courting the next head of the company. We've got our panel of experts here to go through all of the people who could be the next future king or queen of the Walt Disney Company. So let's get into that right now. There's a couple of things I want to talk about with the CEO succession crisis there over at Disney. Now, succession crisis, generally that means that the CEO is gone and they've got to figure it out after the fact. But in this case, you have this bright and shiny team of people, the executive leadership team over there at the Walt Disney Company. First of all, you got Bob Iger, who is, I think, probably my choice for the most likely person to be the next CEO of the Walt Disney Company. Just going to throw that out there.
Nice.
He comes from the Walt Disney Company, and he had a brief stint somewhere else as the chairman of the Walt Disney Company. And then he left and was a consultant for the Walt Disney Company, and now he's CEO again. So obviously, he's my choice for CEO because he has the most experience as CEO of the Walt Disney Company.
Wow. That's an old picture, by the way.
They often are.
One thing I noticed about Hugh Johnston, who is no longer on here, by the way, Kevin Lansbury, his name came up very briefly here. He was a Parks CFO, not a CFO of the whole company, but he was a financial head of the Parks division and came in as an interim guy. I think he had to move to Burbank as well because they didn't know how long it would take. So I bet this guy is really relieved right now to not be the CFO of the Walt Disney Company while they're trying to finagle.
No, Jonas, I'm gonna disagree with you because this guy has been treated poorly. Guess who has to do the call tomorrow at the time that Disney's at its worst point?
Oh, that's a very
Kevin Lansbury. Yeah, he will be the guy taking the heat.
He came from the Parks division that when he was there was making money, and suddenly he walks into the big building in Burbank and finds out how bad everything else really is because for the first time he gets to see all the details. He might be very happy to get on that plane to Orlando, and as far as having to do this call, well, you knew the job was dangerous when you took it, Kevin.
You know what, Lou? The funny thing about this is we've read the reports, of course, that when Bob Chapek got the job, Bob Iger didn't like Bob Chapek seeing the numbers. He didn't want him to look through the stuff. That was not supposed to happen. I wonder if Lansbury even was allowed in the interim position to do what he's supposed to do. Well, that's a great question.
He didn't want to dig in too
deep.
I mean, he has to at least know what not to say. He might inadvertently say something if he didn't know that could cause him serious trouble.
Well, before I answer that question, Bob, why don't you go ahead and take over? That's probably what's going on there.
Yeah, he needs somebody to deflect to. He needs that guy to give the unpopular answers. Latondra Newton, I know this is Tanisha Agramonte, but Latondra Newton was a person who we have a pretty good rumor that she wanted to be CEO of the Walt Disney Company. And she mysteriously left in the middle of the night to go run her jewelry business. And that position has now been filled by Tanisha Agramonte.
Who, by the way, is an individual who suddenly was featured in an executive order from President Biden. And then that skyrocketed her career. And she came out of absolutely nowhere to suddenly be on major C-suite positions of corporations, now landing at Disney, the cultural epicenter when it comes to disseminating ideology to children.
And
isn't it fascinating?
You know that in Bob's, we're got to make less noise about this whole issue. He thought, God, can't she change her name so alphabetically she isn't second in line after me on that page? I mean, you really don't want, of all the various jobs, that one as the second one people see after CEO.
Oh, I don't know. In their world, they might like that.
Well, maybe so.
Probably
Maybe
the
so.
proper place in their viewpoint.
That's a very good point.
Interesting.
Yeah.
This guy right here, I don't think he's ever actually been in running, but James Spataro, as the head of ESPN, has been thrown out there as an option. I think this guy's got to stay in place just in case they spin off ESPN into its own separate company.
You know why he is often mentioned? I think he's mentioned because he talks to the press, but I don't think I don't think he's particularly well suited, or that anybody inside the company really thinks he'll ever take over, because he has not steered ESPN well whatsoever. So
No, the biggest mistake they had was pushing Skipper out. Because had they not done that, they'd have been ESPN. It was in a better place, even though that's when they started to roll in a lot of political stuff. But Jimmy has done a very poor job with ESPN as a manager. He just, as you suggest there, Pro, he just is capable of speaking with the press, and
thus the press is confused by that and go, "Oh, well, he's good because he talks to us. He'll be the next CEO. Let's write articles about it."
I believe, isn't this where the chief diversity officer actually came from? Was from the ESPN side of things? And...
no, that would be Sonia Coleman, I believe, came up from the ESPN side. She's our chief HR person.
Yeah, she's the HR.
Gotcha. Okay.
Which works, by the way, in lockstep with the DEI.
From what I understand, there were some scandals behind the scenes regarding ESPN workplace environment and all those kinds of things.
As the HR person, she is very involved in these negotiations with the various Hollywood unions.
Yep. And Sonia Coleman's name is the other signature on Hugh Johnston's employment contract there. So let's get to the more serious options here. And when I say serious, I mean this guy seriously knows how to wear a sweater.
Nope, throw that guy out of the list. He's not serious whatsoever.
Look at those.
No way.
He's friendly. He looks the most like Bob Iger.
He's friendly. He's charismatic, but his tenure has been terrible. It's time to wipe away the veneer. Ladies and gentlemen, Josh D'Amaro has not done well with the Parks.
Absolutely.
It was blamed on Bob Chapek for a while, and that worked, right? That satiated people by saying it's Bob Chapek's fault. Bob Chapek's gone, and he's been gone.
You want the nail in his coffin?
What is it?
The Pixie Dusters love him.
Yeah,
they always compared him favorably to their hatred of Chapek.
Yeah, I hope they joke when they call him Daddy Josh.
Again, he is one of those guys you will find out in the parks walking around with no name badge, just kind of observing what's happening, and that's one of the reasons why the Pixie Dusters really love him, because he would be out with them, standing in attraction lines. Indeed, but he's capable of running one park. But if you're familiar with, the adage, you rise one level higher than your capability. Of course, I'm paraphrasing. That's not what it is.
Peter principle.
Yeah, the Peter principle. Yeah, he's 2 levels beyond where he should be.
I think you're probably right.
Yeah.
So,
I agree with that.
Let me say this, because I want to separate this out. Everything I've heard about Josh D'Amaro in terms of his personality and who he is, I have heard that he is a tremendously nice and genuine person.
He is.
That's not what I'm saying. So I'm not trying to be personally offensive to him. I'm trying to say that it's just like if you're playing baseball. You can have the nicest guy at bat ever, but if he doesn't hit home runs, you can't keep putting him up to bat. Josh D'Amaro can't get on first base.
Agreed. I think Josh is very nice until you actually wave a project in front of him that requires money. Then it's like, well, no, I don't think we're going to go ahead and do that. But
all that endless blue sky is under Josh D'Amaro. So
do we envision a scenario? Let's just put this out here. We said that Hugh Johnston might be the next guy in line, right? Do we envision a scenario where Hugh Johnston and Josh D'Amaro switch roles, a la Jay Rasulo and Tom Staggs kind of situation? I think if that were to happen, then maybe both of them or one of them in contention.
Are you saying putting Johnston in charge of the theme parks?
Right.
Only if the parks are burning to the ground in the moment, because you're already asking a guy to step down from a more vaulted position.
Oh, yeah.
He's taking a decrease to come to Disney.
He's not going to go from running Pepsi to running the Pepsi stand.
It was what they did with Jay Rasulo and Tom Staggs back in the day.
We're gonna get to Tom Staggs in just a moment. Let's get to 2 more people here before we get to Johnston, and then this one I think is the most serious contender. Honestly, Alan Bergman. He runs the film division. of Disney Entertainment, and he is a serious executive. And while the flops that have been coming out of the Walt Disney Company right now, I don't want to say they're not his fault, but when you see that Marvel Studios and Lucasfilm are the ones that are responsible for creating their large tentpole franchises, and Alan Bergman just kind of has to go, yes, okay, please hand me some more of those. Yes, I love them so much. I think that this guy right here probably is the easiest to slot into that CEO position. I'm not saying he's got everything.
Isn't the fly in his ointment that third line down, including Disney's streaming business?
Ah, that's a very good point.
I don't think Bergman's got a chance.
He had parallel careers. It was the two Allens, right? Because they got rid of one of the Allens, Alan Horn, who was also, instrumental in what Marvel and, supposedly Star Wars was going to become. So the two Allens worked very well together in partnership, and Horn got pushed out in favor of Bergman, and that's how we end up with him in this sole position. And I know that he's got a lot of juice inside the company. He's probably the most likely in the current operation to become CEO, but with the the new addition of Mr. Johnston, I think we know what the succession plan would be. And but I think you're all right. I think he was the right guy, but I would not give him the credit that he gets as far as the success of the film side of the equation, because I know Alan Horn was pretty instrumental.
Right.
In that. So
Agreed. So. And two studios have made the mistake of firing Alan Horn,
as opposed to Dana Walden that we see here. The rumblings indicate that Bergman's not necessarily the biggest Kathleen Kennedy fan, whereas Dana Walden is. Is that right?
That's correct.
Bergman has been at war with Kathleen Kennedy for a while.
Bergman's got my vote.
And clearly lost because she got what she wanted.
And that's why I think Walden. I think it's either between Johnston or Walden at this point. If you wanted to know the two front runners, they're far and away up at the top.
Wait. I'm looking at her.
I think you're right.
Let's here. ABC. Aren't they selling all that?
Yeah, but she's not going with it. That's a very good point. Lou, she generated ABC into being something worth selling.
Oh,
she created a valuable asset.
I see.
And
we loved her so much, we got rid of everything she built.
That's right.
Real quick.
Found it expendable to the overall corporation.
But she's a political ideologue on one side of the equation. To our knowledge, Johnston is not.
She is also a woman. That would make her the first female CEO of the Walt Disney Company, and that's always valuable to a company such as this, although not to Nelson Peltz.
That distinction since 2015, by the way, the company has.
So let's get serious here. We've talked about all the people that they're definitely not hiring for CEO. We've somehow ended up talking about Grumpies. Let's talk about the actual legitimate candidates for CEO that we have here at the Walt Disney Company, or should be the legitimate candidates. Disney CEO Bob Iger taps Kevin Mayer, Tom Staggs as consultants. Former Disney executives are co-CEOs of Candle Media. These two guys right here. Kevin Mayer is the business strategy guy who helped Bob Iger formulate most of his acquisition strategy. First of all, look at that chin right there. He's got the chin of a CEO. I just got to say that. Tom Staggs, both of these guys were being groomed to be CEO of the Walt Disney Company. And we all know how
disparaging Tom Staggs' chin, his jawline. How dare you, sir?
I mean, he's got a good chin, but look at that other one. And we all know how good Disney is at grooming people. Now,
oh man,
you griped at me over Grumpies, and you dropped that in the elevator.
Stuff on this show.
Now. These two people here are victims of Bob Iger sticking around for too long. Kevin Mayer is considered apparently too abrasive in order to be the CEO of the Walt Disney Company. We'll never know. He's doing pretty well over at Candle Media. It's just a media company. It's not a theme park company. It's not a television business. It is an entertainment business, a pure play entertainment. These two guys right now are working with Bob Iger to look at the spinoff of ESPN. But you have two people right here that are in constant contact. By the way, they'll also be working with Hugh Johnston over there on the spinoff of ESPN. These two guys right here are executives in their prime that would be perfect for the position. Now, if you could get both of them, I don't know. I don't think you could probably get both of them now with someone filling the CFO position. But
well, you could have a COO position. and you could make them parallel. And Disney has always operated at its apexes when they've had 2 or 3 brilliant minds at the top.
Now,
And-
Culture, could you elaborate that on more? When 2 great minds last ran the Walt Disney Company?
Well,
Eisner
and Wells, yeah.
And before that, Walt and Roy.
And by the way, that president position hasn't existed since around that time. So could we, have a dual role? I think we could. I know the board has kind of talked about it because let's be honest. Disney Company is in so many wide-ranging industries. Is it too much for one person to handle? I think a 2-person head is, or I'm sorry, a 2-person.
Well, it's going to be 3 because Bob will still be there as the eminence grise.
Well,
and afterwards he'll be able to say, "See, I was so good it took 2 guys to replace me."
No,
there you go.
I don't mind.
No, but
good.
I will also suggest because the audience is not aware. Both of these gentlemen were pushed out. One for a made-up reason, and the other one because of a giant financial conundrum that he created with the NGE project, which included My Magic Plus and everything else. So, which took a price tag close to $2 billion, which was only going to cost $500 million. So that's a $1.5 billion oopsie. So.
I've heard Ike Perlmutter was also instrumental in that as well.
Now you have brought up that multi-billion-dollar price tag here. We do need to get to our next story, but before we do that, of all of these people, does anybody have any thoughts on who of this crop right here might be the most legitimate pick, the most likely pick for the next CEO of the Walt Disney Company?
I think at this point, and you guys have, I hate to say this, you guys have talked me into it. I'm going to say that Johnston is the top dog at this point, simply because of the pedigree and simply because they've brought him in at such a time. But then I'm going to move. I'm going to move the 2 gentlemen you just had up there. I'm going to move them even with Dana Walden in that second tier.
Ouch.
So maybe if you were putting this up there, Johnston's at the S tier, and then these 3 are at A+, and everybody else I think is at this point way down the list. There is no B, there is no C. It's just. They're not happening.
I've said it before. I'll say it again. They need to go outside. And Johnston is sort of almost from the outside. So maybe that's the best choice if you're going to be with these people. But they need to go totally outside. And it doesn't have to be a movie guy or a theme park guy. It has to be a guy who knows the value of $1 and says no once in a while.
The other thing is, you're going to have to bring in somebody from the outside who actually has been part of something bigger than Bob. Because if Bob is sticking around, you've got to have somebody who can push back against that personality. That guy who wants the 2 showers.
After what we know about what happened with him, thanks to that article with all the details with Chapek, nobody would take that job without an absolute rock-solid guarantee that Bob stays in his office, takes showers, and stays the hell out of the way.
That's right.
That would be part of the deal, just as much as we said the other day that anything that Robert Downey did, he would have to have approval of a script and a director, or else why bother?
If you take the contract, there's 2 things that you demand before you ever sign. 1, you will not be subjugated, and 2, you will not be subverted. There's your big 2 S's.
Right, and we don't have time to go over the contents of this article right now, but this one from Alex Sherman is 12,000 words and goes over the entire problem of Chapek being named as successor to Bob Iger, not being interviewed, just being told one day, by the way, you're CEO of the Walt Disney Company, I'm going to leave, and good luck answering all those questions about what's going on in China and spreading rapidly like a pandemic across
and don't read the numbers. Don't read what we've actually got. Just take our word for it.
Right. So this article right now, if we forget what it is for Bob Chapek, the important thing is that anyone coming in as CEO of the Walt Disney Company is going to read this article and see Bob Iger's undue influence over that CEO role. Times that Chapek was overruled on calls that should have been Bob Chapek's call. Times that Bob Iger said, you know what, I'm going to be really petty about this. And he's going to literally go on Twitter and poison the public relations machine against the current CEO of the Walt Disney Company in order to make himself look better so he can get back into the Walt Disney Company. This is a guy. Sorry, go ahead, Luke.
I was going to say, not that they're ever going to, but if they offered me $1 billion to take the job, I would say, if you pay that guy off of his deal and get him the hell out of the building tomorrow, otherwise no deal. That's what it would take.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Big Blue Horses for 199. If you hire all yes men, succession isn't relevant. Absolutely.
True
That-
story.
Yeah.
Very wise. Thank you so much for following That Park Place. Don't miss tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. where we will be hosting another live stream where we can take your comments and questions live while we go through the news stories of the day. And of course, like this video. If you like this video, consider sharing it out on social media if you know someone who's interested in this kind of topic. And of course, subscribe to That Park Place for all the news that should be fun.
Thanks for watching That Park Place News. For more information, consider checking out www.thatparkplace.com. And don't forget to subscribe, share, like, and send this out on your favorite social media accounts.